We're going to begin with the story of Absalom.
This is the story of a young man who was the son of a king. He had it all, more than he could ever want. But before our story even takes place, he had already been getting into trouble. He was a bit of a reckless type, you know, the kind that thinks they can do whatever they want, and just worry about the consequences later.
Absalom was known to be the best-looking dude in all of Israel, and he knew it.
Absalom frequently had problems dealing with other people, but was just wily enough to manage to avoid dealing with those consequences that he never seemed to worry about. This continued until one day when he raised the stakes higher than he had ever before.
Absalom decided that he wanted to be king, and it didn't matter to him what he had to do to become the king. He began working among the people to poison them against King David. He would spend his days at the gates of the city where the people brought their problems. He would use all the charm and flattery he could muster to turn the men of Israel to his side.
After 4 years, Absalom had stolen the hearts of the people of Israel. Around this time, Absalom asked the king if he could go to Hebron to pay a vow which he had vowed to the Lord. This was all part of his secret plan to overthrow King David. He left Jerusalem with 200 men he had deceitfully invited to be his guests. He also sent messages to each of his conspirators in all the tribes of Israel. He wrote that the time for rebellion was near. While Absalom was in Hebron, the conspiracy grew stronger as more people joined him each day. News was brought to David of the rebellion of Absalom, and he was forced to flee the palace. So the king and all of his people left the city of Jerusalem and went across the Kidron Brook towards the wilderness.
After they had gone some distance, a messenger appeared with word that the revered advisor Ahithophel had joined Absalom. This was tough news for King David, as he greatly respected the wisdom of Ahithophel. He prayed that God would make his counsel be foolish.
It also happened that about this time, David's close friend and advisor, Hushai, came upon the group. David had the brilliant idea to send Hushai as a double agent and saboteur to Absalom to thwart all the good plans of Ahithophel. He asked Hushai to go back into the city and do what he could among the men of Absalom and send word to him about whatever he learned.
So Hushai, David's friend, went back to Jerusalem as a double agent, just as Absalom was getting back to Jerusalem.
In those days, the advice of Ahithophel was as if one had consulted the word of God. Both Absalom and David had the highest opinion of him. Absalom and Ahithophel and the rest of his captains were trying to come up with a strategy for dealing with King David. Ahithophel claimed that all he needed was 12,000 men, and he could take out David that very evening. He argued that he would find him on the run when he was at his weakest, and the job would never be easier. He urged Absalom to avoid war with his own subjects, that his true quarrel was with David alone.
Absalom liked the plan of Ahithophel, but he was also interested in hearing what Hushai had to say. Hushai made his case that David and his men were battle-hardened warriors with years of experience. He claimed that the only way Absalom could overcome David was with all of Israel at his back. Absalom liked the counsel of Hushai because the Lord had chosen Hushai to turn Absalom away from the good counsel of Ahithophel.
Hushai went to the priests and told them the plans of Absalom. The priests then sent messengers to David so that he would know what to expect from Absalom. On the following day, the servants of David met the people of Israel under the command of Absalom in battle. Before the battle began, David met with his 3 captains and told them to be gentle with his son Absalom, for his sake. All of his people heard these orders. The 2 armies met in the field for battle. The men of Israel were defeated by the servants of David in a landslide. As Absalom was riding through the woods, his beautiful hair got caught in the huge branches of a tree. His horse kept running, and he was left there, hanging by his hair.
One of David's servants brought David's captain, Joab, that he had seen Absalom hanging by his hair out of a tree. When Joab heard this, he immediately took up his javelin, found Absalom, and killed him.
Absalom's story shows us what happens when a person believes they are entitled to the world, and they never consider the consequences of their actions. This is a prime example of what happens when someone loses sight of God's will in their life and follows earthly pleasures. When we are considering doing something, only thinking of ourselves and not seeking after God's will, we can never be sure where the consequences will take us.